Good afternoon. This is Tanisha Laverne Grant with blackinamerica.com. I am super excited about this afternoon's interview. It has been on and off the calendar since the top of the year, and finally we got it right. I will be talking this afternoon with NFL Pro Bowler Wale Ngunlia, who is a head of sports and entertainment at UBS. With the mission to teach, athletes and entertainers about wealth management. This is something that we definitely need. We need a bigger conversation about wealth management. Wale, let's just jump on in here because I have tons of questions for my viewers. I cover for blackinamerica.com. I also contribute to Arise News in Nigeria and in London. I also contribute to Pix 11 News and HBCU Connect, which is an audience of young, very young, HBCU students who, of course, want to be in arts and entertainment and sports because they see the optics, right? Mm-hmm. And then they see the optics go down the tube very quickly. So let's just start with just the basic fundamentals of wealth. Like, what is wealth? This interview really is going to be like a nuts and bolts kind of like, lecture, if you will, because that's what I want. I really don't want this to be a news segment as much as I would like to be a teaching moment, right? Yeah.
First of all, thanks for having me. So I get that. I'll jump right into your question with what wealth is. And I think for a lot of people, it's got to be different things. For the Black community and for communities we come from, it has to start with knowledge, right? I think the easiest thing for us, and I think our hardest thing for us is to get is actually the zeros in our bank account. But the easiest thing has been the ability to try to get the knowledge. And that's what I think we need to do as a community first, is seek out those venues and those vehicles that will give us the knowledge to understand how do we get past living day to day? How do we get past living from tomorrow or by check to check? But more importantly, how do we start building that legacy that we need to have? And that's what's missing from our community. So I think for us, the first thing that I would say, wealth is knowledge, is knowing exactly what money is, the way it works, how it moves, and how it needs your attention and respect. But at the same time, it's a platform for us to make sure that we have something left over for future generations. So again, it's a broad conversation, but I think for us, the basic, keys that I would say it has to start with education.
I just want to be real transparent here. I was telling your publicist, Gina, that my father passed away last year of COVID-19.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. It has been most devastating for me and my sister. We are his only heirs, his only children. And he left us abundance. He left us 5 residential properties. And of course, there are financials there as well. But what my father did not leave his daughters was the tools, because he's old school. Daddy's got it. Yep. Don't worry about it. You girls are going to be okay. Assuming that he could walk us through it, that, because you always think you have more time.
Yeah.
And so now he's not here to walk us through it. And we're like, oh my goodness, do we sell this property? Do we keep this property? This property seems like a money pit. This property is in a blighted community. So I have tons and tons of questions. So, when you're first meeting with, an athlete who, is coming into, the NFL, or the NBA, and, you're tapping them to come on board UBS. Like, how do you pitch? Like, what does that pitch look like for you? Like, what is the anatomy of your pitch to young athletes that, are coming into wealth, to get them to come on board, for you to advise them and manage their financials?
I think one, you hit on a key point there. I think for a lot of athletes and entertainers, and again, if we're going to talk about our communities, we don't have those discussions when it comes to our finances, right? We're not sitting around the dinner table discussing the plan for when our parents are not around. And I know going into these meetings with these young men and women that, there's a high percentage that they haven't had these conversations that we should be having, right? Whether it comes to, do I have a will? Do I have assets that are going to be left behind? Will there be debt left behind? What do I need to do for taxes and estate planning and stuff like that? We're not having those discussions. So at first, what we need to do, and again, we talked earlier about how money is different for a lot of people. It's very, very emotional how money is. Now for you, knowing that your dad did leave some of his assets behind for you, you're going to have a different approach on how you view money. And for each person is a different stroke, different person. But what I want to do is, and what we try to do from a introduction, is build a relationship, right? So at the end of the day, we want to know what's important to you, right? Is it family? Is it community? Is it getting a first house? Is it getting married? Is it continuing on your career? Do you want to go into the Hall of Fame? Like whatever that is, I think that's more important, right? Because at the end of the day, you can buy Google or Amazon stock anywhere, right? You can do it on your phone nowadays. That's how accessible it is. But to have someone that really, truly, truly understands who you are, wants to have a real relationship with you, and not just a transaction, that is where we start each and every conversation, understanding who our clients are, what's important to them, and what they want to leave behind. And I think that will get us to the gist of getting us into a place where we're creating legacies, and we're building communities, and we're being examples for the generation that are coming behind us.
That's fantastic. And you're right. There aren't enough conversations. How do you even broach the topic of, a will and estate planning to a young athlete who thinks they're going to live forever and that nothing is ever going to happen to them, Wale? Nothing ever happens to anybody.
We all do the same thing, right? We all get in our cars, or we might get on the subway, and again, we think, tomorrow is going to be there, but it's not promised for anyone. And the sad part about life is, you'll turn on the news and you'll see someone who has, we feel, has not lived their full life, right? Has something, an accident or an overdose or whatever the case may be, has been taken away from us. Maybe COVID-19 has been taken away from us, we feel, far too soon. But the truth of the matter is, we don't know the days we were going to be born. We don't know when we're going to leave this earth. So we have to be prepared. The same way you are prepared for this interview, or the same way an athlete's preparing for a game on Sunday, the same way that an artist is preparing for a performance at a stadium, we've got to start preparing for life in general. And that includes death. And it's a very nasty conversation. We don't like having it, even preparing for marriage, and then maybe sometimes even divorce. Those really sticky conversations, we've got to find ways, again, to get at the dinner table and start talking about these things where it's not taboo, where it's not like we're putting a jinx or scaring ourselves into
the jinx.
Yeah, jinx, right?
I'm sorry.
But we have to really start having these conversations at our dinner tables, because the communities that are thriving and are making sure that they're leaving stuff behind, they're having these discussions and they're putting a plan in place just in case, disaster hits.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm definitely grateful for my father. He was a young dad, the eldest of 12 children, in the housing projects of Chester, Pennsylvania. And unfortunately, it was put upon him, to be that father figure, even to his younger sisters and brothers, and almost a surrogate husband, unfortunately, to my grandmother, and so there's a lot of entitlement, from the siblings and from his mother. But, our father had a will, and it was very airtight and very specific, so I'm very, very grateful about that. When you talk about, let's just say, having some as my dad would say, there's no such thing as disposable income. But, you have like $10,000, right? Today, young people are taking $10,000 and they're invested in cryptocurrency, the NFTs. What are your thoughts around that? Staples Center, which I live right behind downtown LA here, is now, it's now called the crypto center or something. So this cryptocurrency thing is really, really big. And I would really like to know, like, what your thoughts are, around it, and the future of it. And, should we be getting in on this? Like, is this, the Staples Center is now called the Crypto Center or the cryptocurrency arena, whatever. So, teach us your ways. Teach us your ways.
Well, it's pretty simple for me. What I think ultimately, I get it. It's a hot topic. I personally get a little, I get afraid. And this must be some of the things that we grew up with not understanding money. Like, I get afraid with these new conversations. And then when my barber is talking about it, and then when someone at the gym is talking about it, and then when the Uber driver is talking about it, I tend to want to take a step back. So my first thing I'll tell everyone, whether it's crypto or it's just wanting to invest in the stock market or investing in bonds and the government, do your research. But get people around you that understand exactly what it is. Get advisors, get individuals who understand, and then find somebody to vet that information. I think that's the key for any investing that we want to do, whether it be cryptocurrency or regular stocks and bonds. I would advise you to get a trusted advisor to, one, help understand really what disposable income is. Understanding, do you have enough money to pay your bills day to day? How much debt are you in? Do you have much money to spend on 3 to 5 years, which is, we call that the longevity bucket? And then, do you have enough money?
Wait a minute, it's a longevity bucket. I like that.
Yeah, we do the 3 L's. It's, liquidity is short term, longevity is 3 to 5 to get you through those 3 to 5 years, and then the legacy bucket. So it's the 3 L's. And you have to have.
Wait, what are the 3 L's again? What are the 3 L's again, Wale? I'm writing this down because this is so important.
The first one is liquidity.
Liquidity.
Today, right now, I have enough liquidity to take care of things if something arouses. 3 to 5 years is longevity. Like, okay, it's a little longer. My viewpoint is, 3 to 5 years, and I'm maybe planning to buy a house in 3 to 5 years or purchase a car, stuff like that. And then the last L that I like to talk about, that we like to talk about here at UBS, is the legacy bucket. Now that's the biggest, I think, bucket we as a community just can't fathom, right? Because just like your dad, there's so many things now that he becomes the breadwinner. He's taking care of everyone, right? And I talk about money should be moving forward, and it is. It's moved forward to you and your sister, but in a lot of our communities, it's moving laterally and it's moving backwards to grandma and grandpa or uncle, and it should be moving forward to our kids and to the communities and our future. But because we are coming from a place where we're behind, we and the ones who suddenly become the breadwinners feels like it's our obligation to take care of some of the mistakes, or not even mistakes, but some of our starting position where we started so far behind, general, America. We feel like we've got to somehow find a way to help everybody out. And then that's where you see the headlines where athletes are going broke. They're not going broke on themselves. They're going broke on having to keep everybody up with the Joneses, and it's just not sustainable. It's not.
And I love that you talk a little bit about wealth guilt,
Yeah.
I think, and a lot of people don't talk about that when we speak about our young Black athletes, because it's real.
It's so real. It's so real.
Many people are tugging on them.
It is. And people, because it's such a judgmental society we live in, we'll look at, let's say I was an athlete and I wanted to give back to the Boys and Girls Club or to the Urban League. But then there's a gentleman who may want to go to nice dinners with his friends or go to a nightclub or take them on trips to Cancun. And, an advisor in most situations would say, I'd rather deal with the guy that wants to give back to the Boys and Girls Club. He seems to, get it. But I look at both individuals as the same person, right? There's something in us that we want to give back. Some may want to do it a certain way, and others may want to do the other way. What I want us and our advisors here at our firm is to stop looking at it from a stereotypical point, take a big step back and look at it as, what is the psychology around getting all this money quickly? What are the factors and the people that are pulling on them, that are making them feel maybe guilty for having all this money? You yourself, like where your dad grew up in projects in Pennsylvania, I grew up in the same projects in New York City. And just imagine seeing, the families that you grew up with, maybe some of them on government housing, some of them in government, someone living in government housing and someone not having enough money to make it check to check. And then all of a sudden, you're the one person out of all these thousands of individuals and families that lived in these communities that made it out. This may be, some guilt attached to that. Like, why did the universe, why did God choose me? And that can become destructive if you don't have the right people that are able to channel that emotion and those feelings the right way. And that's why we came up with this piece called Sudden Wealth, because we wanted to look at it from, again, a relational standpoint. How do you view money? How are you attached to it? And how were you brought up with it? And I think for us, if we start having those real conversations, and it's almost feel like we have to have a therapy session when it comes to money.
It is. We
need to talk about it. And we have to understand what's pulling on us and making us make the decisions that we make, which the financial industry sometimes feel is destructive. I look at it as, no, that's actually, you're just not doing a good job of understanding who your client are. And our AECs, our athlete and entertainer consultants here at UBS, go through a program where we actually have these discussions so that they can understand exactly who our young men and women are that are in the communities, and making sure that we don't fall into those biases and those stereotypes that plague the financial institution in sports.
Yeah. I mean, it's so loaded. Mm-hmm. It's so loaded. And, working in the entertainment news space, me and my colleagues, most who are women, because, we cover the red carpet. It's not that men don't cover the red carpets, but the eyes are on the women. We're out there with the gowns, and, we got a little bit of bread now, and we're like, okay, what's next? Because we're not buying another Louis Vuitton bag. We're not buying any Gucci. This stuff, how do we do this? How do we do this? So I got to be honest, this interview is not just for the audience, but it's for my homegirls too. I'm like, you guys call Wale. I got him on speed dial. He is waiting for you. So why UBS? There are other investment firms that are out there. Why did you choose UBS, to come on board and to really, have this program as a lightning rod, tapping into the entertainment business? You're like the conduit now between UBS and a sports and entertainment world. So why UBS?
I'm going to be honest with you. I really understood the message when I heard, one of every two billionaires banks at the UBS. $4 trillion under management. And everyone goes, well, what does that really mean? I said, well, what that means for my community is I knew nothing of UBS, right? I was born and raised in New York City. I'm about 10, 15 miles away from Wall Street. And I had a ton of money in the bank and still didn't have the opportunity to even be introduced to what UBS was. And I was starting to think, why are we not in these conversations? Why, when I go to dinner with my financial advisors, all we're talking about is, what Kobe steak we're going to have and, maybe what house we're going to have. Why am I not at a place where billionaires are? And I really feel like it was an opportunity for me to open up the resources of our firm, force them to have the discussion that athletes and entertainers are actually seeing themselves more than just athletes and entertainers. They see themselves as entrepreneurs and creative beings and artists that are willing to grow. And the amount of money that we make, the ability to bring joy and happiness to all of Americans, I feel is our obligation as being the biggest private wealth firm in the world to help provide that last L, right? Create the legacies in our communities for our athletes and entertainers, and no better place than the biggest private wealth bank in the world, right? I can go to our CEO and say, this is the way I'm looking at it. I can say, I want to talk about money in a different way. I want you to understand why these two individuals are actually the same person, even though historically you've been very judgmental on the way you look at an athlete that wants to give back to his homeboys or to his homegirls and wants to, spend his money on his grandma, on his grandpa. Like, we've got to stop doing that. And UBS said, well, hey, you know what? You're right. We do have the resources. We do feel like it's our obligation to give back. You take it. Your experience as a professional athlete, 11 years in the NFL, and our experience as being the biggest private wealth manager in the world actually is a win-win. And we feel like there's nobody, whether it be our competitors or not, that actually has this game plan. And the good thing about it too is I personally don't ask people to bring their money to the firm. I just want to make sure that when you do get in front of our advisors, that we are upskilled, we understand our communities, we understand why it's important that we have a legacy, and then more importantly, that we are the best in class. And I have the resources to create that, and that's what we've been doing these last 2.5 years.
Now, as we begin to wrap this up, because I wish I had an hour, I should have asked for an hour. But what are the components of, your ideal candidate, who you would even consider bringing into UBS? Outside of the, athlete who we know has, a contract that's ahead of them, for myself and my girlfriends who are the entertainment correspondents, the ones who are moving the narrative, who are like, okay, well, we have this contract and it's this much, so what does that candidate look like? Just your everyday professional Black woman. And I have to really speak about Black women because Black women are making so much money now.
Yeah, killing it. So I would say this, that I personally don't, when we meet a person, we don't ask about how much money you have. I think really first we want to get to know who you are, and then let's see if it's a good fit. And maybe UBS might not be the right fit for everybody from, how much money you got coming in, what's your goals. But the thing is, let's have that discussion. And truthfully, what we're able to do, even if you're not a client, is it's my obligation to provide you the best in class service, advice, opportunities to move forward. And eventually we think that it's always going to work out in the long run. So there's no, for me personally, I don't put a limit on who we feel like should be a candidate. But again, it's got to be somebody that's willing to learn, listen, that wants to, again, create that legacy for them and their families. And you'd be a perfect candidate for us. Yeah, there are some advisors that deal with a certain amount of, clients from an asset perspective. But again, that's a conversation we can have with everyone, and we'll figure out what's the best fit.
Okay. Lastly, I got to ask, what are your thoughts about Elon Musk buying Twitter?
So funny, listen, I wish I had a $43 billion just hanging around.
But you buy Twitter? You buy Twitter, Wale? Come on. Not pure hunger.
We need to come up with an invention to get somebody to buy our thing for $43 billion. I mean, gosh.
Yeah. Well, Elon Musk.
Did you see the text? Like someone said, like randomly said, "Hey, you should buy Twitter," and he's like, "Yeah, how much is it?" And like now he's bought it for $43 billion.
Craziness.
I think we're in the wrong game. What are we doing?
Yeah, I have no idea, but we're on the right track. We have made the pivot. We got our dear Nigerian brother Wale Ongulia to be the conduit, helping us navigate the wealth space. the wealth space. To my sisters, my Black women in the entertainment news, we're about to set it off, y'all. We got Wale. We got Wale. We got Wale now.
Listen, just invite me to the parties. I want to be. I don't have to walk the red carpet. I just want to be there. I just want to be there. That's all.
We will make sure you have VIP. The world is opening back up. Hollywood is definitely back on fire again. I'm just, thank you. Thank you so much for being who you are. You know, we need this level of dedication, care in our community, in the financial sector. So thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I told you this was going to be a great interview. I told you. Thank you so much for your time, and continue blessings and success.